Caseus, Jedi Redeemed. Chapter 7. Cassie's head was swimming when he woke up in the cargo bay of the Arabella. As he tried to sit up off of the floor, he found his hands restrained behind his back and his lightsaber missing from his belt. The events that previously transpired flashed through his mind like a vague memory. Gaidom? Gaidom, where are you? Hearing no reply, Cassius hung his head in frustration.
He's being tended to by Crash.
Cassius looked up at the doorway and saw Pip standing with his wrench in hand. Pip, what happened back there?
What happened? I should be asking you. You and Gaidom were fighting, and then you... Captain, you blinded one of his eyes.
Gaidom. Pip. I lost it, didn't I?
Cassius. That back there? That was... I don't know. But you looked like you might have hurt someone else.
Pip, I need to go see Gaidom. Please. If I could just talk to him.
Sorry, Captain. I have my orders. You have to stay here until we get back to base.
Then when he's up, tell him to come see me. I'll stay right here.
I'll ask. No promises, though.
Pip turned and shambled out of the cargo bay, leaving Cassius alone as he hauled himself against the wall and sat in an upright position. What had he done? The last thing he remembered clearly was Gaidom confronting him. But he knew Pip wasn't lying. He attacked a fellow Jedi. Not only that, he had attacked a friend. Someone who was trying to help him. The situation seemed all too familiar. The same thing happened nearly 2 decades prior when Corbin lost it during a sparring match at the temple. Except now, he was the one in Corbin's position. And he was just as remorseful and full of shame as his old friend. Cassius sighed and bowed his head. He shouldn't have gone to Dandaren. But of course, even if he went back in time and told himself that, he wouldn't listen. For so long, he had been hell-bent on his desire to see Dotami and the others suffer for what they did. It grew and festered in his mind, consuming his thoughts like a cancer of the soul until all that was left was vengeance. Vengeance. Many years ago, Cassius was taught the tenets of the Jedi Order. Things a Jedi should be and do. Things they should not. Amongst the many things forbidden to the Jedi was to seek vengeance against those who wronged you. It was confusing, he thought, that something that seems to be second nature to all sentient beings, the idea of an eye for an eye, was amongst the many things he was told never to act on. After all, if a man strikes you without just cause, you strike him back. Isn't that justice? Isn't that fair? But no. Cassius had been given yet another painful reminder of the price of vengeance. The lust for revenge corrupts the soul and warps the mind. When you seek revenge, he was taught, your mind is never truly focused on getting even, but getting the upper hand, making their pain twice as bad. Soon it becomes your goal, and you stop at nothing to achieve it. Cassius looked down, silent and ashamed, until he heard footsteps. Looking up, he saw Gaidom standing in the doorway, his eye covered with gauze and bandages. The air went cold as the two looked at each other. Gaidom. Gaidom said nothing. He just stared. I'm sorry. I lost control. I didn't mean to... You did far more than lose control, Cassius. I warned you that the dark side was taking you. I tried to help you. And you did this. Gaidom, save it. You can explain yourself to the rebel leaders when we get back. If you're thinking of jumping ship and taking off, you can forget it. As of right now, you are a potential threat to your comrades and the Alliance. Potential threat? Gaidom, and I'm holding on to your lightsaber until further notice. It's clear to me that you aren't in any state of mind to carry that responsibility. Gaidom, if you would just listen to me, I will listen to you. During your trial before the rebel leaders. Until then, stay put and save your breath. Think on your actions. These words made Caseus fume. Think on my actions? You ordering me like some kind of Padawan? Call it what you want, Caseus. As it stands now, I have nothing left to say to you. We'll be arriving soon. Gaidom turned and left, leaving Caseus angry and seething. A threat? He wasn't a threat to anyone except Otame until Gaidom got involved. That's what he told himself. But he knew in his heart he was in the wrong, since he embarked on this mission. At this point, rationalizing his actions only brought up more issues with his role in the situation at hand. All he could think about was whether or not the rebels would execute Otame and Haji for their actions, or whether they would show leniency and let them live. He didn't want to know the answer right now. Either choice simply made him angry. Closing his eyes, Caseus tried to do something he hadn't done in years. Meditate. Try to calm himself, and let the Force speak to him. Try as he might, though, his mind was filled with too many things that were bothering him. Instead, he sat still and waited. Within the hour, the Arabella landed back on Yavin. As Caseus sat in the cargo hold, he heard footsteps and the unmistakable voice of Dotami as he argued and scolded the rebel soldiers escorting he and Haji off the ship and into custody. Soon it was his turn. A few soldiers entered the cargo bay and hoisted Caseus to his feet as he was led off the ramp of the ship and into the hangar. As he was ushered forward, he caught a glimpse of Sanja running to Gaidom and looking in shock upon the injury he sustained. He couldn't make out what was being said, but from the ice-cold glare she gave, Caseus could put the pieces together. Into the deep caverns of the Masasi temple, Caseus was pushed and prodded forward until they stopped in front of a holding cell. The sight made Caseus cringe. Another cell. At the very least, he hoped this one would be temporary. The door opened and Caseus was moved inside, and his restraints removed before the door was locked. After a while, Caseus realized he hadn't slept properly in a few days. He doubted he would sleep here, but there wasn't much else he could do. Lying down on the uncomfortable cot, he closed his eyes and drifted off. He was awakened a few hours later by two guards who called him forward to the cell door, where they once again restrained him before leading him onward. He was brought into a large briefing chamber where several leaders of the Alliance sat. Some he recognized. Others he had no knowledge of. Standing in the center was Gaidom, a backed-up patch over his left eye. General Aran Press stood.
Have a seat.
Caseus looked at the chair in front of the large metal table and sat down.
Disciplinary meeting in session. Let's begin. State your name for the record.
Caseus Urshan.
Age?
42 years.
Caseus, are you aware of the charges against you?
I am.
For the sake of the record and full transparency, your list of charges are as follows. Unsanctioned departure on board Rebellion Starcraft. Failure to inform Alliance Authority of said departure and the purpose of your mission. Repeated failure to respond to incoming transmissions from military personnel. Blatant disregard for your personal safety as well as the safety of those accompanying you. Refusal to cease action taken against an enemy despite repeated orders. Engaging in combat with Colonel Haywigan and resulting in bodily harm. Do you deny any of these charges?
I do not. Gaidom stared at Caseus for a moment before turning his attention back to General Press.
Colonel Haywigan, are these charges against Caseus Urshan accurate as described?
They are.
If I may, I would like to hear your side of what happened first, Colonel.
Gaidom stepped forward. Yesterday afternoon, approximately 7 hours ago, I learned that Captain Tyron had taken off from the temple in the Arabella with Caseus in tow. After calculating their flight patterns and with assistance from P1P17, I learned that they were on their way to Dandarin. I was unsure of the motive, but given Cassie's demeanor and recent history, I came to the conclusion that Cassius was heading there in search of the people responsible for his disappearance a few years prior. Recognizing the threat he posed to himself and the crew, I departed for Dandarin immediately to stop him from making what I believed to be a mistake made out of a desire for revenge. Upon my arrival, I was able to follow the tracking beacon left by P1P17 and found Cassius as he was preparing to kill Dotami Fortuan. I tried to talk him down, but it soon became apparent that Cassius was lost in his anger, and he attacked me. After a brief skirmish, I was overpowered and received the injury you see on my left eye. Cassius seemed to briefly come to his senses, and Captain Tyron, not willing to accept the threat that he posed, fired a stun blast from his weapon and brought him down before restraining him. We then apprehended 2 prisoners from this venture, Dotami Fortuan and a boy, Haji, son of the former administrator of Bespin. We returned to Yavin approximately 2 hours and 37 minutes ago.
Thank you, Colonel. Caseus, you will now be given an opportunity to state your side of what happened for the record.
Cassius sat still and looked at Gaidom and the rebel leaders. Almost 4 years ago, after evacuating Bakura, following a mission on behalf of General Press, myself, Pip, and my apprentice, Liara Cinda, were accosted and captured by Dotami Fortuan, and a few others that held a vendetta against me. We were subdued, and Liara was killed in front of me. Rather than kill me, Dotami had me enslaved in the mines of Kessel, using connections he had made with the Pike Syndicate. I was on Kessel for over 3 years, where daily torture, beatings, and malnourishment were daily occurrences. Days ago, Gaidom and the others managed to liberate me and bring me here to Yavin 4. I was broken. I just wanted to run away and hide somewhere. It was soon, however, that Bendel Tyron informed me that he had discovered the location of where Dotami and his cohorts were hiding out. They'd set up residence on Dandarin. We left in the Arabella to go after them. When we arrived, we asked around until we found a lead and traced Dotami to a series of abandoned foundries in the western mountains of the planet. Upon chasing them, there was a fight, and I chased after Dotami on foot. Dotami was the one responsible for killing Liara, and I wanted revenge. Gaidom was right about that. I couldn't let him live after what he did. What he took from me. Unbeknownst to me, Gaidom had tracked us down. He tried to stop me, but I wouldn't hear it. I tried to kill Dotami, and Gaidom stopped me. We fought, and he said something that enraged me, and I wounded him. I came to my senses shortly after, but as he said, Bendel subdued me. The rest you know.
It seems then that your accounts for what happened more or less line up with each other. You understand, of course, that there will be appropriate consequences for your actions.
Cassius scoffed beneath his breath and looked up at the rebel leaders.
What I understand is that as much as you'd like to dress this up as some sort of official trial, all it is you looking for an excuse to keep me here, so you can keep an eye on me. You're all afraid that I'm going to get myself captured by the Empire somehow, and that if I do, I'll be selfish enough to turn your rebellion over in exchange for my life. We're simply taking the appropriate measures to be sure this situation is dealt with, and doesn't arise again in the future. I'm sure. So what are you going to do? Imprison me here? I survived Kessel. Compared to that, a rebel holding cell will seem like paradise. You can't demote me. You can't reprimand me. And you won't kill me. Quite simply, any punishment you issue would be a waste of your time. As much as you'd like to think otherwise, you have no authority or power over me, and nothing you can take from me will compare with what I've already lost. I trust then you are lacking in remorse for your actions then.
I am remorseful. I acted brashly and I injured Gaidom. That doesn't mean I'm going to beg for your forgiveness.
Colonel Haywicken has suggested another form of recompense for your actions, if you are willing to take action.
What are you talking about?
Colonel?
Gaidom sat across from Caseus. Caseus, you've made it abundantly clear that you're done fighting the Empire. Fine. But I'd say that given what we've done, freeing you from a death sentence on Kessel, giving you refuge and resources, you owe us something in return. The rebellion is reaching a turning point. Before long, all-out war is inevitable, and we need to be prepared for when that happens. You are going to assist us in a number of missions gathering intelligence and resources from the Alliance. After we feel your debt has been paid, you can go on your way and do what you want. Caseus smirked and looked at Gaidom, unfazed by his cold demeanor. What if I say no? Then good luck getting a ship off of Yavin. As of now, every one of our deck officers has been ordered to not allow you on any Alliance craft without an escort of level 12 personnel or higher. If you try anything funny, you'll be answering to me. And I can assure you that it will be quite difficult without your lightsaber. I cannot in good conscience return your weapon to you, Caseus. You're not in the right state of mind to wield that responsibility. When I feel that you're no longer a threat to myself or the rebellion, I will return it to you. Until then, it stays with me. Caseus scowled. You should know better than anyone here what an insult it is to keep such a possession from a Jedi. I do. Just as you should understand that a lightsaber in unstable hands is a threat. You have two choices. Help us and earn your freedom, or you can leave and pray you find a ship somewhere else on this planet. I highly doubt that'll happen. Caseus sat and gritted his teeth before returning his attention to Gaidom. What missions are we talking about? You'll be briefed when we're ready to enact the first one. Until then, security will show you to your quarters. Two officers arrived and stood on either side of him. After this is over, I'm done. That's your decision then. I'll contact you later. Caseus was led from the briefing chamber to a series of rooms stretching down the long stone halls of the temple. Stopping in front of one of the doors, they scanned a keycard as it opened, revealing a room with a bed, amenities, and a window with a view of the rainforest outside. As the soldiers left, Caseus stepped inside and found a few sets of fresh clothing and a few other essentials. If he was going to be here for a while, he figured it best to clean himself up a bit. After a long hot shower, Caseus stood in front of the mirror, staring back at his own tired, weary expression. On the shelf were grooming items for shaving and trimming. Taking the clippers, he stood over the sink and began to trim his beard and his hair. Both had not seen proper care in quite a while. He watched as locks of brown hair fell into the running water. Finishing up, he looked back into the mirror and sighed, straightening his hair and brushing off any remaining bristles from his neck and face. Exiting the washroom, his heart jumped when he saw a woman standing in his doorway with dark hair and a stern expression. You must be Gaidom's wife. Sanja stepped over to Caseus and smacked him across his face. Caseus stood holding his stinging cheek as she glared at him. If it were up to me, they would have taken your eye as punishment. I'm going to tell you this once. If you ever harm my husband again, I'll be sure to return the favor myself. I don't care how much you've lost and suffered. This rebellion is bigger than any one person, and it's bigger than you. When you've paid your debt, you can go crawl into a hole and die for all I care. But we will be here, fighting back. Caseus stared at her as she abruptly turned and left his quarters. It was bad enough being stuck on Yavin, working for a cause he held no faith in. It was worse being seen as a potential threat. Sitting on his bed, he stared out of the window at the falling rain. With nothing else to do, he closed his eyes and fell asleep, preparing for the days ahead.